up on some very serious learning curves here, and spiritual curves. And what's going to make them difficult is that the way we've been living has to change, because the system we've all been living in was designed to fail, and it's crumbling now as we speak. And not only that, but not only are we rising in consciousness, but because of the rise in frequency, the Schumann resonance, the galactic waves that are hitting us, and our conscious evolution, our bodies are beginning to change, which means the medical community is no longer going to be relevant because our bodies are going to change. Pharmaceuticals are not working on our bodies anymore. And they're freaking the hell out because they only know the old system, where humanity is literally breaking away. So the curves that are coming is letting go of the past and putting ourselves in a mindset, well, you know what? Why don't we start talking together as a community, as a nation, as a planet, and start talking about what it is we really want. What is it that we really want? And a lot of people haven't even thought about that. You know, I mean, I've asked a lot of people over the years, well, what is it that you really want? And they don't know. All they know is survival.
Yeah.
You know, just doing enough to get by.
You know,
that alone's overwhelmed them, you know?
Very interestingly, please, Alex.
No, go ahead.
You know, but when you speak about the medical industry and
that's
you
true.
know,
there have been so many false stories and so many blinds. At this particular time, it's very, very difficult to exactly know where things are at, because I think the white hats and the black hats, there's still a little bit of shaking out to do, but we're clearly moving in a positive direction. But there's still some black hats. Otherwise, this would be over by now, you know? And it's not over yet. We may be near the end. It would be spectacular if we had that.
Absolutely.
It would be absolutely, especially these kids that have been abused that they found in underground, especially kids that are dying of leukemia or cancers. There is just no reason for any of that to happen. And you know what? All this talk about overpopulation, you could give everybody now, it used to be Texas, but now you could give everybody an acre of land and put all the cities on the planet in Alaska, and Alaska could house the entire world's population right now. It's just rubbish, the garbage they're feeding us. That's all it is. It's rubbish.
Absolutely. So, you know, ultimately, where we keep incarnating on this earth or another planet, what is the end goal after thousands and hundreds of thousands or even millions and millions of years later to come? What is the goal for us, our souls?
Yeah, everybody's asking that question on all the dimensions, as far as I know. You know, why is it set up this way? I guess maybe because we got so bored in heaven, we had nothing to do. You know, we drank all the scotch and there was nothing left to do. I'm joking.
I get it. Yeah, of course.
You know, there was nothing left to do. So God's like, hey, I have a plan. You know, let's send you back into time and have you start all over again. You know, and probably everybody was like, yeah, that's a great idea. You know, if you Romulanales, you know, you're not reading the fine print. So we fell into time, and honestly, I don't know. Maybe at some point, each one of us becomes our own universe. And we have all the knowledge and all the experience and all the abilities to do that. I can't answer that question, you know. Right now, I'm still trying to figure out Alex Kольera.
Right. So do you think that although we incarnate into other planets and everything, or even here, do you think that we can even incarnate to the future and the past?
Yes. Yes, that is possible.
Is that through
In
wormholes?
fact, there are several soul groups here now that have come back in time to right a terrible wrong.
Wow. Okay.
So the answer is yes.
Right.
You have to remember when the universe isn't linear. It's not linear at all. You can, if you know what you're doing, you can jump back and forth. For example, in fifth dimensional, the Andromedans, they can project themselves almost 1,000 years into their future, but they can also come back indefinitely into the past, even on other dimensions.
Wow.
So, but you know, it's interesting, the same law exists there as it does for us. Every time you look at the future, it changes. So if you were to do it again, let's say a few days later, there would be something different. It would not be exactly the same. So that particular law is prevalent regardless of the dimensions. But my understanding is that on some of the higher levels, they have become so dialed in that they no longer use future travel because they're creating it in the moment as they speak, as they live. They already know the future because they are projecting it and creating it in the moment they are. They don't send themselves into the future to see if they get there. To them, it's already done. It's already a foregone conclusion because they as a civilization are creating that future themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Where those that still time travel, whether it's back or forth or back, they're still learning who they are. They're still, you know, they're being mentored by someone and then they're mentoring others. In other words, again, it's the law of consistency. You know, they may not know everything, but what they do know, they know they can pass on to other civilizations. And they're obligated to do that, to pass on the information, because what that does is everybody is at the same level. That's the ultimate goal. And the more you share information, the more you are aligned in a specific goal or consciousness, everything seems to move very, very smoothly. And survival, there is no survival. You evolve very gracefully towards your goals. And everybody seems to be pretty happy, from what I understand. It's only the dark side they're all fucked up.
Yeah.
You know, nothing makes them happy.
Yeah.
Even when they take everything, they're still not happy. It's not enough.
Because of the ego, they're just never
because
happy.
of the ego, and because, you know, nothing can fill that void of themselves. Only themselves can fill that void. But they're not even looking there.
Mm-hmm.
They're not even looking there.
So when we die, will we remember why we came here?
That's the rumor.
That's the rumor, right?
That's the rumor. Yeah, you know, we're shown. You know, you had Michael Jaco on, and he talked about, well, I think it was with you. He talked about where he's had some out-of-body experiences where he's fighting bad guys, and he's died in his dreams and they brought him back. I've had many of the same similar experiences, battling bad guys, monsters, literally, and been brought back twice that I'm aware of. And, you know, a lot of us are having those experiences. You know, when we go to sleep, we're still working. You know, our spiritual bodies are out and we're doing things. Most of it lower fourth density. What we're trying to do is help clear a path for the planet, for humanity to pass through the lower fourth density barrier where there's a lot of junk, a lot of garbage, dead spirits, demonic entities, etc. To pass through that with as much ease as possible so that we can get into higher fourth density as quick as possible. Because once you get there, it's great. From what I understand, it's smooth sailing from there. So that's why so many people are tired all the time. You know, they may get their 10 hours, but they get up in the morning, they're still exhausted.
I also find that the more I'm waking, the more I find that I'm not interested in movies or games. Really, I've never been into games, but I'm more interested in learning, like, you know, the things that I've learned from you in the last few months from listening to your videos. I mean, spiritually and mentally, it takes me through a lovely journey, and that's the fun that I have. You know, that's how I see it.
Well, then you have some insight as to how the A's process it. You know, they're not interested in distractions. You know, they're interested in living a reality and creating a reality, and then seeing it physically manifest. That's their joy. That's where they express the most love, and because they can share it with the rest of their civilization. And there's no limits. There truly are no limits, just the ones we put on ourselves.
So
I absolutely know they're around, because I know that they're working with the fifth dimensional Pleyadians as well, because the Andromedans mentor the Pleyadians. So they're all working together, the Tau Cetians, Alpha Centauri. There's many groups that are here that have a genetic link to us. They're here working to make sure that this leap happens, because they all have soul groups here. And they have to help. They are obligated to assist these soul groups.
right.
So we're gonna be okay.
Right.
You know we're gonna be okay.
So how would you compare the Pleiadians to the Andromedans?
I don't know. I don't know the piece.
Okay.
I know that, and I will say this, that part of the problem we have now with the reptilians is because the Pleiadians had promised humanity some guardianship. And then what happened was the Pleiadians had a civil war in their star system, and they withdrew. And humanity was enslaved right away. As soon as they left, other groups came in and enslaved humanity. They were just waiting. And then you have some Pleiadian groups in Aldebaran that are service to self. So, you know, it's a mixed bag. They're an evolving culture as well, civilization. You know, I think when you regress or repress other civilizations, it's because you do not know yourself.
Absolutely.
And you can teach about, but usually you have to experience that for yourself in order to truly learn it.